My name is Orville, 34 years old, and I never thought my decision to help my family would end with my own father disowning me. For the past 5 years, I have been quietly paying my parents' bills through automatic payments from my tech business earnings. My controlling father and my approval-seeking sister never appreciated it. Then came that group chat message that changed everything. Don't call us. Don't visit. You're cut off. What happened next? Shocked even me. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and stay until the end to see how one reply message turned my family upside down. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Naperville, just outside Chicago, my childhood memories are colored by my father Harold's obsession with control, particularly when it came to money. He was the type of man who believed harsh lessons were the only ones worth learning. I remember when I was 10 years old, I had saved up $20 from doing extra chores for neighbors. I proudly showed my father, thinking he would be impressed by my initiative. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked, his voice carrying that familiar edge. "Maybe buy a new video game," I replied excitedly. He shook his head slowly. "Hand it over. I will teach you about the real world." He took my money, placed it in his wallet, and said, "Lesson 1. Nothing is truly yours until you can defend it. Now, earn it back by doing yard work for me." I spent the next 3 weekends raking leaves and pulling weeds, only to learn at the end that my $20 had been taxed for living expenses. I received $7 back. My mother Diane never contradicted him. She would give me sympathetic looks from across the room but never intervened. Her approach to family conflict was avoidance at all costs. "Your father knows best," she would whisper when consoling me later. "He is preparing you for the real world." My sister Amanda was 3 years younger than me and learned a different lesson from our upbringing. While I became determined to escape our father's financial control, Amanda became the perfect people-pleaser. She learned that agreeing with our father, regardless of her true feelings, earned her small tokens of affection that I rarely received. "Look at Amanda's report card," my father would announce proudly. "Straight A's. That is what hard work looks like, Orville. Never mind that I also earned good grades, while working part-time jobs that Amanda was not expected to take on. The standard was always different. By the time I was 17, I had made myself a promise I would become so financially independent that I would never need to ask anyone for money, especially not my father. I worked through high school at the local grocery store, saving nearly every dollar. When college acceptance letters arrived, my father made it clear that while he was willing to help with tuition, every dollar would need to be paid back with interest. "I am not a charity," he reminded me. "Consider this your first real-world loan." I chose to attend the University of Illinois on a partial scholarship, instead working 3 jobs between classes to make ends meet. Those years were exhausting but formative. While other students partied, I coded late into the night building what would eventually become my tech company, SecureSync, a cloud security solution for small businesses. By my senior year, I had launched a beta version that was already generating enough revenue to pay my rent. At graduation, when most of my peers were anxiously sending out resumes, I was hiring my first 2 employees. My parents attended the ceremony, my father actually showing a rare glimpse of pride. "You might have been onto something with all that computer nonsense," he conceded, which from him was high praise. The first time my parents asked for financial help came about 2 years later. My company had secured significant venture capital funding, and a local business magazine had done a profile on me and my 7-figure success story. The day the article was published, my phone rang. It was my father, his voice uncharacteristically friendly. "Your mother and I are having some temporary cash flow issues," he explained. "The roof needs replacing, and our savings took a hit with some investments that have not matured yet." He did not ask directly for money that would be beneath him. Instead, he talked about potentially taking out a high-interest loan, sighing heavily about how they really get you with those rates. I offered to help, sending him $15,000 for the roof. I did not call it a loan, and he did not call it a gift. The unspoken arrangement seemed to satisfy his pride while fulfilling my long-held desire to prove my success to him. I thought it was a one-time thing. It was not. Over the next 3 years, SecureSync grew from a promising startup to a legitimate industry contender. We expanded to 30 employees, moved into real office space in downtown Chicago, and counted several Fortune 500 companies among our clients. My personal income grew substantially, allowing me to purchase a comfortable condo in Lincoln Park and invest in my future. I had achieved the financial independence I had dreamed of as a teenager. Meanwhile, my parents' financial situation was deteriorating, though I only discovered this gradually. My father had made several poor investment decisions, pulling equity from their home to fund what he called guaranteed returns in various schemes that never materialized. He had always considered himself financially savvy, despite evidence to the contrary, and his pride prevented him from admitting his mistakes until they became crises. The requests for help became more frequent, but were always framed as temporary solutions. First, it was helping out with their property taxes. Then it was covering an unexpected medical bill when my mother needed gallbladder surgery, and their insurance did not cover the full amount. Each time my father presented the situation as exceptional, a one-time issue that would not recur. We would not ask if it was not important, he would say, making me feel that questioning the necessity would be callous. After the 4th or 5th emergency, I suggested setting up automatic payments for their major bills. I positioned it as a convenience for all of us, a way to avoid these stressful last-minute requests. In reality, I hoped it would give me better visibility into their actual expenses and prevent the constant drip of urgent demands. I can just set it up to pay your mortgage, utilities, and insurance directly, I explained over dinner at their house. That way you will have predictability, and I can budget properly too. My father was initially resistant, seeing it as too explicit an acknowledgement of dependency, but my mother persuaded him. Harold Orville is just trying to help in a way that is organized, she said softly, and you always say organization is the key to financial success. He reluctantly agreed, and soon I was paying their $3,000 monthly mortgage, several hundred in utilities, 2 car payments, and their insurance premiums. The total came to nearly $5,000 monthly, a significant sum even with my income. While my parents' financial situation was stabilizing due to my support, my sister Amanda was facing her own challenges. After graduating with a fine arts degree, she was attempting to establish herself as a painter in Chicago's competitive art scene. Her talent was genuine, but sales were sporadic at best. She lived in a tiny studio apartment with barely functioning heat and worked part-time as a barista. I helped her too, though less formally than with my parents. Sometimes it was covering her rent when a gallery showing did not sell as expected. Other times it was buying art supplies or funding a workshop she wanted to attend. Unlike my father, Amanda was effusively grateful, sometimes to a degree that made me uncomfortable. "You are literally saving my life," she would exclaim, hugging me tightly. "I do not know what I would do without you." As I became the family financial safety net, I noticed the dynamics shifting in subtle but significant ways. My father, despite now being essentially dependent on my support, became more critical of my business decisions, offering unsolicited advice on how I should run the company that was funding his retirement. "You should be expanding internationally by now," he would declare over Sunday dinners that I paid for. "Your growth strategy lacks ambition." My mother became accustomed to a lifestyle that ironically was more comfortable than when they had been self-supporting. She redecorated their home, joined a country club, and spoke often about the Alaskan cruise they were planning. The most troubling shift, however, was in my relationship with Amanda. She increasingly positioned herself as the intermediary between my parents and me, calling to hint that they were expecting something before they would directly ask. "Dad mentioned their property taxes went up again," she would say casually. Just thought you might want to know before he brings it up. This triangulation made family gatherings increasingly tense. I would arrive at their house, now largely maintained through my financial support, and feel my father's resentment despite his dependence. My mother would lavish praise on me that felt performative rather than genuine, especially when it was followed by mentions of new expenses they were considering. The first major argument came after 18 months of automatic payments. My father called to inform me, not ask me, that they had decided to purchase a new car. The monthly payment would be $800, nearly double their previous car payment that I was already covering. The Lexus dealer is delivering it next week, he said. We will need the first payment on the 15th. Wait, I interrupted. Should not we talk about this first? That is a significant increase. His tone immediately hardened. I did not realize I needed your permission to make decisions. Are you saying you cannot afford it? The question was a trap, designed to make any objection seem like either an attempt to control them or an admission that my success was less substantial than I claimed. I felt cornered. That is not what I am saying, I replied carefully. I just think major financial decisions should involve some discussion, since I am the one making the payments. So now you want to control us, because you help out with a few bills, he snapped. This is exactly why I was hesitant to accept your help in the first place. The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with my reluctant agreement to cover the new higher car payment. I hung up feeling manipulated and disrespected the familiar childhood sensation of powerlessness washing over me despite being the one providing the money. That night I confided in my best friend Jackson over drinks. You realize this is completely messed up, right? He asked after I explained the situation. They are taking advantage of you, and they have got you so twisted around that you feel guilty for even questioning it. They are family, I said weakly. Family does not mean unlimited financial obligation with zero boundaries, Jackson replied. Especially when there is no gratitude involved. His words stayed with me, but I continued the payments. The path of least resistance seemed easier than the confrontation that would come with establishing boundaries. Little did I know that confrontation was inevitable, and it would come in a form I never expected. The next 2 years brought a steady escalation in my parents' expectations and entitlement. What had begun as occasional help with genuine emergencies had morphed into an unquestioned obligation on my part to maintain their increasingly comfortable lifestyle. During one particularly revealing incident, I arrived at their home for a weekend visit to find a crew of landscapers installing an elaborate koi pond and waterfall feature in their backyard. The project was clearly expensive, with large stone slabs, professional-grade pumps, and exotic plants surrounding the installation. What do you think my mother asked proudly as she led me to the window overlooking the construction? It will be featured in the neighborhood garden tour next month. It looks extensive, I replied carefully. Was this planned for a while? Your father decided last week after seeing one in a magazine, she said. He always wanted a water feature. We deserve some nice things at our age. Do not you think? The assumption that I would simply absorb this cost without question was now so ingrained that it was not even discussed. Later, when I checked my credit card statement, I found a charge for $22,000 from Elite Landscape Designs. My sister Amanda had fully embraced her role as messenger between my parents and me. She called regularly with subtle hints about their expectations. Mom mentioned they are thinking about updating the kitchen appliances, she would say. Nothing fancy, just Sub-Zero and Wolf. You know how much Dad loves cooking now that he has time. Her own requests had also increased in frequency. What started as genuine emergency assistance had evolved into regular subsidies for her artistic development. When a gallery in New York expressed interest in her work, she immediately assumed I would fund her trip accommodations at a boutique hotel and the shipping of her larger pieces. This could be my big break, she insisted. I cannot show up looking unprofessional. The art world notices these things. I funded the trip along with a new wardrobe she deemed essential for making the right impression. The gallery sold 2 paintings for a total of $3,000 less than half what I had spent on the trip. Amanda considered it a tremendous success. My relationship with Lydia, a software engineer I had been dating for nearly a year, began to suffer under the weight of my family obligations. She noticed how my mood would darken after phone calls with my parents or sister. "You tense up every time their names appear on your phone," she observed one evening as I declined a call from my father. "And you always call them back within 5 minutes, no matter what we are doing." "They are family," I said, my standard response. "So that means they own your time, your money, and your peace of mind," she challenged. "I have never heard you say no to them, not once." Her observation stung because it was accurate. I had established no boundaries, and as a result, there were none. My family's demands expanded to fill the unlimited space I had provided. When Lydia and I had planned a weekend getaway to celebrate her promotion, my mother called the day before with news that their water heater had broken. "We cannot possibly go without hot water," she lamented. "And the emergency replacement costs twice as much as a regular installation." I canceled our reservation to deal with the situation, discovering upon arrival that the water heater had been malfunctioning for weeks, but they had waited until my planned vacation to address it. Lydia was understanding but increasingly frustrated. "They do this on purpose," she said, after the third such emergency coincided with our plans. "They are marking their territory, showing that they take priority." Jackson and other friends echoed similar concerns. During a poker night at my condo, the conversation turned serious after I stepped away to take a call from Amanda about my father's birthday expectations. "This is financial abuse," said Taylor, a friend from college who worked as a therapist. "They are using money to control you, which is ironic, considering you are the one providing it." "I think you need to start setting some limits," added Jackson. "Not just for your sake, but for theirs too. This dependency is not healthy for anyone." I knew they were right, but the prospect of confronting years of established patterns terrified me. I had become trapped in a prison of my own, making the bars built from my desire for approval and my fear of conflict. The last straw came during a family dinner celebrating my mother's birthday. I had reserved a private room at an upscale restaurant, ordered her favorite champagne, and arranged for a special cake. The evening had been pleasant enough until my father cleared his throat as dessert was being served. "Your mother and I have been thinking," he announced. "The house is feeling cramped with all our activities. We are considering upgrading to that new development by the lake." I nearly choked on my cake. The development he mentioned was a luxury community where homes started at $1.2 million. "That seems like a big change," I managed to say. "Have you looked at the numbers?" "Of course," he replied dismissively. "We will need to increase our monthly budget by about $4,000. The homeowners association fees are higher, but the amenities are worth it." He continued discussing the features of the new community, while I sat in stunned silence. My sister enthusiastically joined in talking about the guest suite where she could stay when visiting, and the community studio space she could use for painting. The assumption that I would simply fund this significant lifestyle upgrade without question was the moment clarity finally broke through. I realized that there would never be an end to the escalation of expectations. No matter how much I provided, it would never be enough, and my value to them was increasingly tied to what I could give rather than who I was. "I will need to think about this," I said quietly. My father's expression hardened immediately. "What is there to think about? You make more than enough to cover it." "That is not the point," I replied, feeling a strange calm descend as I finally prepared to establish a boundary. "This is a major decision that affects me financially. I need time to consider it." "Consider it?" he repeated incredulously. "Since when do you question supporting your family? After everything we have done for you?" The conversation quickly escalated with my father, reminding me of the sacrifices they had made for my education, which I had largely funded myself, and my mother tearfully suggesting that I did not appreciate them. Amanda attempted to mediate, but clearly sided with our parents, suggesting that I was being unnecessarily difficult about a simple upgrade. I left the restaurant that night with the distinct feeling that a breaking point had been reached. Something would have to change, but I had no idea it would happen so dramatically or so soon. 3 days after the disastrous birthday dinner, I was in the middle of a critical meeting with potential investors when my phone began vibrating repeatedly. I ignored it until the meeting concluded, then checked to find multiple notifications from our family group chat, which typically lay dormant except for holiday coordination and occasional family photos. The first message was, from my father, time-stamped, 2:17 p.m. After much consideration, your mother and I have decided that, if you cannot support our decisions without questioning and controlling us, we no longer wish to maintain this arrangement. Do not call us. Do not visit. You are cut off from this family until you can show proper respect for your parents. We will manage without your conditional support. I stared at the phone in disbelief, scrolling to see what prompted this nuclear option. The preceding messages revealed nothing unusual, just some mundane exchanges about an upcoming community event they had invited me to attend. Then I noticed my sister had liked my father's message, adding her own response. I think this is for the best. The negativity and control issues have been affecting everyone's mental health. Sometimes, space is the healthiest solution. The betrayal stung with unexpected intensity. For years, I had supported not only my parents, but also Amanda through countless financial challenges. I had funded her art supplies, rent trips, and education, always believing we shared an understanding about our parents' manipulative tendencies. Now she was not only endorsing their ultimatum, but actively participating in it. I sat alone in the now empty conference room. A strange calm replacing the initial shock. For the first time in years, I saw the situation with perfect clarity. This was not about the luxury home, or even about money at all. It was about control. By threatening to cut me off, my father was attempting to reassert the power dynamic he had enjoyed throughout my childhood, using emotional manipulation to overcome the financial reality that he needed me far more than I needed him. After several minutes of reflection, I typed my response. I understand your position and respect your decision. Perfect. I will cancel the auto payments for your mortgage, utilities, car loans, insurance, and credit cards. First thing tomorrow morning. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I pressed send, placed my phone face down on the table, and took a deep breath. Part of me felt terrible, but another part, long suppressed, felt a surge of liberation. I had finally stated a boundary clearly and without anger. Whatever happened next would at least be honest. For nearly 45 minutes, the group chat remained silent. I returned to my office, briefed my team on the investor meeting, and tried to focus on work. Then my phone began to vibrate again, first with notifications from the group chat, then with direct calls from my father, mother, and sister in rapid succession. I did not answer, but watched as the messages accumulated. From my father, you are clearly misinterpreting what I said. This is exactly the kind of overreaction that concerns us. From my mother, Orville, please call us immediately. Your father did not mean we wanted the financial support to end. He was talking about emotional space. From my sister, oh my God, are you serious right now? You cannot just cut them off like that. They need those payments. The transparent backpedaling might have been amusing if it was not so sad. For years, I had been the family ATM, expected to provide unlimited funds with gratitude for the privilege of being allowed to do so. Now that I had called their bluff, The pretense was crumbling with remarkable speed. I did not respond immediately, needing time to process my thoughts. My phone continued buzzing as more messages flooded in, the tone shifting from indignation to panic as the reality of their situation apparently sank in. At 5:23 p.m., I received a private text from Amanda. "Look, I know you are mad, but I only liked Dad's message because he expected me to. You know how he gets if I do not take his side. Please do not punish them because of me. They really cannot manage without your help." Her admission of performative agreement did not surprise me, but it deepened my resolve to break this dysfunctional pattern. This was not just about financial boundaries, but about the emotional manipulation that had defined our family dynamic for decades. By 6:00 p.m., I had 7 missed calls from my father, 12 from my mother, and 9 from Amanda. The group chat had over 30 new messages, ranging from attempts at clarification to outright accusations of cruelty and ingratitude. At 6:45 p.m., I finally responded with a single message. "I am respecting your clearly stated wish to cut ties. I will not be answering calls tonight as I need time to process this change in our relationship. The automatic payments will be canceled tomorrow as stated. I harbor no ill will and wish you all the best." This triggered another flood of messages, increasingly frantic in tone. My father switched from defensive justification to outright threats. "If you go through with this, you will regret it. Family does not abandon family. You would not have your precious company without the education we provided." My mother appealed to emotion. "I cannot believe you would let your father's pride hurt all of us this way. I raised you better than this. I have not slept in days worried about all this tension. Is this really how you want your mother to suffer?" Amanda's messages veered between pleading and accusation. "They are literally freaking out right now. Dad is saying things I cannot even repeat. This is going too far. Why are you being so heartless?" As evening turned to night, the tenor of the messages grew increasingly desperate. My father referenced potential legal action for promised support. My mother mentioned having chest pains from stress. Amanda claimed she would be homeless, since she would have to move back in with them if they lost their house. By midnight, exactly as the thumbnail text described, my phone was constantly lighting up with missed calls, text notifications, and voicemails, many in all caps with multiple exclamation points. The reasonable request for boundaries had unleashed a storm that revealed just how unhealthy our family dynamic had become. In that moment, sitting alone in my darkened living room watching the digital evidence of my family's panic, I made a decision that would change all our relationships forever. I would follow through on canceling the payments not out of spite or revenge, but because it was the only way to reset a fundamentally broken system. Only by enduring the uncomfortable truth of our situation could we possibly build something healthier from the ruins. The night was long and largely sleepless. I silenced my phone but could not stop myself from checking it periodically, watching as the barrage continued unabated. By morning, I had 97 missed calls and over 200 text messages. The voicemails ranged from tearful pleas to hostile accusations, often switching between the two in the same message. At 8:30 a.m., with a strange sense of calm, I called my bank and financial institutions. One by one, I canceled the automatic payments that had been flowing to my parents' mortgage company, utility providers, car loans, insurance policies, and credit cards. The process took less than an hour, but its significance felt monumental. For the first time in years, I was reclaiming control of my own financial resources. The bank representative asked the standard question, "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "That covers everything. Thank you." Almost immediately after hanging up, my phone rang. It was Amanda. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Have you actually done it?" she demanded, her voice shrill with panic. "Yes," I confirmed. "The auto payments have been canceled as I said they would be." "Do you have any idea what you have done?" she nearly shouted. Dad is talking about having to sell the house. Mom is in tears. How could you be so cold? I am respecting Dad's clear statement that he wanted to cut ties. I replied evenly. His exact words were, "Do not call us. Do not visit. You are cut off." Those were his choices, not mine. You know he did not mean it that way, she protested. He was just upset about you questioning the new house. Then he should not have said it, I responded. Words have meaning, Amanda. So do actions. Like you liking his message and agreeing with him. There was a moment of silence before she continued in a more measured tone. Look, I only did that because you know how he gets if everyone does not agree with him. I was just trying to keep the peace. By throwing me under the bus, I noted. That is not fair, she protested weakly. None of this has been fair, I replied. Not the expectation that I would fund everyone's lifestyle without question. Not the manipulation when I asked for basic consideration in major financial decisions. And certainly not the attempt to punish me emotionally when I did not immediately agree to add another $4,000 monthly to already significant support. So this is punishment, she accused. Getting back at us? No, I said firmly. This is a boundary. Dad stated his, and now I am stating mine. I will not continue to fund people who explicitly tell me they do not want me in their lives unless I do so without question or input. After another silence, her tone changed completely, becoming conciliatory. Okay, I get it. You made your point. Everyone is really sorry about what happened. Can you please turn the payments back on now? Their mortgage is due next week. This is not about making a point, I explained. This is about establishing a healthy relationship moving forward. We cannot go back to the way things were. What does that even mean, she asked, frustration evident in her voice. It means we need to have an honest conversation about expectations, appreciation, and boundaries. In person as adults. Fine, she conceded. I will tell them, but can you at least cover this month's bills while we figure things out? They really cannot manage otherwise. I considered this request carefully. I will make one final payment directly to their mortgage company, I offered. The rest they will need to handle while we work through this. And I want a face-to-face conversation, not more text messages or manipulative phone calls. She agreed reluctantly, and we arranged a meeting for the following weekend. As I hung up, I felt a mixture of anxiety and resolution. The hardest conversations were yet to come, but at least they would be honest. Throughout the day, the messages continued, though, with less frantic energy than before. My father's tone oscillated between self-righteous indignation and grudging acknowledgement of the predicament. One message particularly captured this contradiction. While your reaction is completely disproportionate to the situation, we recognize that there may have been some miscommunication about expectations. Your mother is very disappointed in how you have handled this. My mother's messages were exclusively emotional appeals, heavily featuring her distress and health concerns. I have not been able to eat since this all started. Is that what you wanted? To make your mother sick? With worry. After all the sacrifices I made for you growing up. By early evening, my Uncle Robert, my father's brother, called. We had always had a good relationship, and he had often served as a moderate voice in family disputes. Orville, he began without preamble. What the hell is going on? Your father called me ranting about you cutting them off financially. I explained the situation, including the original message from my father and the months of building tension that preceded it. Let me get this straight, he said after listening patiently. Harold sent you a message, explicitly telling you not to contact them and that you were cut off from the family. And now he is angry. Because you responded by cutting off financial support. That pretty much sums it up, I confirmed. Uncle Robert sighed heavily. Your father always did have a talent for creating his own problems. Listen, I am not taking sides here, but for what it is worth, I think you are handling this appropriately. There has to be some accountability. His support was unexpected and deeply appreciated. As we continued talking, he revealed something that gave me additional perspective. You should know that your parents have been quite boastful about their lifestyle in family gatherings, he explained. New cars, country club memberships, renovation plans. Harold has presented it all as evidence of his successful planning and investments. I had no idea you were funding any of it, let alone all of it. This information was both hurtful and clarifying. Not only had my parents taken my support for granted, but they had actively misrepresented it to others as their own success. The depth of the deception reinforced my conviction that the current situation, while painful, was necessary. Thank you for telling me, I said, and for listening. Family is complicated, he replied. But that does not mean it has to be toxic. Stand your ground, nephew. By midnight, exactly as the title suggested, my phone was filled with a storm of missed calls and screaming texts. The most revealing came from my father. At 11:47 p.m. I spoke with a lawyer today. He says you cannot legally withdraw financial support that we have come to depend on without proper notice. This could be considered elder abandonment. Is that really the road you want to go down? The threat was as desperate as it was baseless, but it represented the most honest expression of the underlying dynamic. In his mind, my financial support had transformed from a gift into an entitlement, something he had a right to, regardless of how he treated me. I did not respond to the threat. Instead, I turned off my phone completely and went to bed preparing mentally for the confrontation that would come with our scheduled meeting. For the first time in years, I slept deeply unburdened by the weight of unspoken resentments and unacknowledged manipulations. The storm might still be raging, but I was no longer standing in the rain. The morning I was scheduled to meet with my family, I drove to my parents' house with a mixture of determination and apprehension. As promised, I had made one final mortgage payment directly to their lender, but had maintained the cancellation of all other automatic financial support. Their neighborhood looked as pristine as ever, manicured lawns and luxury vehicles in driveways, belying any suggestion of hardship. My parents' house, with its recently installed koi pond gurgling peacefully in the front yard, appeared untouched by the financial reality they now faced. I parked in the driveway, noting that both my parents' cars were present, the new Lexus. My father had insisted on gleaming in the morning sunlight. Taking a deep breath, I approached the front door and rang the bell instead of using my key, a small but significant acknowledgement that the relationship had changed. My mother answered, her expression a carefully composed mask of wounded dignity. She had clearly made an effort with her appearance, hair perfectly styled and makeup applied with precision, perhaps hoping to convey that all was well despite the circumstances. "Orville," she said stiffly, "we have been expecting you." The living room was arranged like a formal meeting. My father, seated in his usual armchair like a monarch holding court. Amanda perched nervously on the edge of the sofa, glancing between my father and me as if anticipating an explosion. The tension in the air was palpable. "Thank you for coming." My father began his tone, suggesting he was granting an audience, rather than participating in a necessary conversation. "We hope this discussion can resolve the unfortunate misunderstanding that has occurred." "I do not see it as a misunderstanding," I replied, calmly, choosing to remain standing, rather than taking the offered seat. "Your message was quite clear," as was my response. "People say things in anger," my mother interjected. "Surely you understand that." "I do," I acknowledged. But this was not just about one angry message. This has been building for years. My father's expression hardened. "If you are referring to our perfectly reasonable request to upgrade to a more suitable home, your reaction was completely disproportionate. It was not about the house, specifically," I explained. "It was about the assumption that I would fund a significant lifestyle increase without any discussion or consideration. "We have always been appreciative of your help," my mother insisted. "Have you?" I challenged, gently. Because from my perspective, appreciation would include respecting my input on major financial decisions that directly affect me. Amanda, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "Can we just move past who said what and focus on the immediate situation? The utility bills are due next week, and the car payments the week after that." Her focus on the practical financial concerns rather than the underlying relationship issues was telling. I turned to address her directly. "That is exactly the problem, Amanda. Everyone is focused on resuming the flow of money rather than addressing why we reached this breaking point." My father scoffed. "So this is some kind of lesson you are teaching us? Financial manipulation. To get your way?" The irony of his accusation was not lost on me. I find it interesting that when I respond to being explicitly cut off from the family by withdrawing financial support, it is manipulation. But when you threaten to cut me off emotionally, unless I fund your lifestyle, without question that is considered reasonable, a tense silence followed. My mother was the first to crack tears welling in her eyes. "We never meant for things to get so complicated. We just thought since you were doing so well, you would want to share that success with your family." "I did want that," I replied, softening slightly. "I still do. But sharing success should be mutual and respectful, not one-sided and demanded." For the next 2 hours, we engaged in the most honest conversation our family had ever had. There were raised voices, tears, and moments of painful clarity. My father initially maintained his defensive posture, alternating between minimizing his role in the conflict and justifying his expectations. My mother vacillated between emotional appeals and genuine moments of understanding. Amanda remained largely focused on the practical implications, but occasionally offered insights into the family dynamic from her perspective. The breakthrough came when I shared Uncle Robert's revelation about how they had presented their lifestyle to extended family. "You were telling everyone that your lifestyle was the result of your own financial acumen," I said, "while simultaneously depending entirely on my support. Can you understand how hurtful that is, to be both financially essential and publicly erased?" Something in my father's expression shifted, a momentary glimpse of shame breaking through his defensive facade. "We did not want to appear dependent," he admitted reluctantly. "It was a matter of pride." "I understand pride," I acknowledged. "But it cannot come at the expense of honesty and respect." By the end of our conversation, we had reached a tentative understanding. I would resume some financial support, but at a significantly reduced level and with clear conditions. They would need to create and adhere to a realistic budget based on their actual needs rather than escalating wants. Major expenses would require discussion and mutual agreement. Most importantly, the support would be acknowledged rather than disguised or taken for granted. "This feels like being treated as children," my father complained. "It is being treated as adults in an interdependent relationship," I corrected. "Adults discuss, plan, and consider each other's positions when making decisions that affect everyone involved." In the weeks that followed, the practical implications of our new arrangement became clear. My parents had to make significant lifestyle adjustments. The country club membership was canceled. The Alaskan cruise was indefinitely postponed. The new Lexus was returned and replaced with a more modest vehicle. The plans for the luxury home were abandoned entirely. These changes were not implemented without resistance. There were passive-aggressive comments, attempts to renegotiate terms, and occasional emotional outbursts. But the fundamental power dynamic had shifted, and we all recognized it. My relationship with Amanda underwent its own transformation. Initially, she was caught between loyalty to our parents and dependence on my support, often trying to play mediator while protecting her own interests. I feel like I am constantly walking on eggshells, she confessed during a private lunch 3 weeks after the confrontation. Dad complains about you constantly, but is careful not to alienate me since I am their connection to you. You do not have to be that connection, I pointed out. You can establish your own boundaries. This conversation sparked something in Amanda. Over the following months, she began taking concrete steps toward genuine independence. She found a more stable job at an art gallery, secured a roommate to share expenses, and became more selective about which creative projects she pursued, focusing on those with commercial potential rather than solely artistic merit. I realized I have been using my art as an excuse to avoid growing up. In some ways, she admitted during another of our increasingly frequent one-on-one meetings, watching you stand up to Dad made me question why I have been so afraid to stand on my own. As for my parents, the adjustment was hardest for my father. His identity had been so intertwined with financial control and the appearance of success that the new reality challenged his core self-image. There were days when the old patterns threatened to re-emerge, when demands were disguised as requests and manipulation masked as concern. But something fundamental had changed. I had demonstrated both the willingness to enforce boundaries and the compassion to not abandon them entirely. This combination created a new respect, begrudging at first, but gradually more genuine. 3 months after the group chat message that triggered everything, my father called me directly, something he rarely did without prompting. "The new budget is working," he said without preamble. "Your mother and I have even managed to put aside a small emergency fund." "That is great," I replied, genuinely pleased. A pause followed, filled with words unsaid. Then, in a voice almost too quiet to hear, he added, "Thank you. Not just for the help, but for..." He trailed off, unable to fully articulate the deeper truth. "I know," I said, sparing him the struggle. "I understand. It was not a perfect reconciliation or a complete transformation. There would still be difficult moments and old habits reasserting themselves. But it was an acknowledgement of a new reality, one in which respect flowed both ways and support was given and received with honesty rather than manipulation or entitlement." The storm had cleared, and while the landscape had changed irrevocably, what remained was more authentic than what had come before. 6 months after the group chat message that transformed our family, I stood in the backyard of my parents' home watching, as my father carefully tended to the koi in the pond he had installed without consultation. The fish darted beneath lily pads, orange and white scales flashing in the late afternoon sunlight. My father looked up as I approached. "The biggest one is new," he said, by way of greeting. "Got him last week at that specialty store in Evanston." "He is impressive," I acknowledged, noting without comment that the purchase had not been preceded by a request for additional funds. This was part of our new reality, my parents living within the means we had mutually established. "Your mother is inside finishing dinner," he added, straightening up with a slight wince, his knees protesting the movement. The past 6 months had brought significant changes to all our lives. My parents had downsized in subtle ways, finding a balance between comfort and fiscal responsibility. The mortgage was still their largest expense, but they had refinanced to a more manageable payment. The country club membership had been replaced by community center activities that my father initially dismissed but now grudgingly admitted to enjoying. My mother had started a small online business selling handcrafted jewelry, more for personal fulfillment than financial necessity, but the modest income gave her a sense of contribution. Our financial arrangement had evolved into something more sustainable and dignified for everyone involved. I still provided support, but at a level that represented genuine assistance rather than total dependency. More importantly, the support came with mutual respect and clear communication. Amanda had perhaps undergone the most dramatic transformation. After our confrontation, she had taken stock of her own life choices and recognized patterns of dependency that mirrored our parents' behavior. Her journey towards self-sufficiency began with small steps, a more reliable job at an art gallery supplemented by teaching workshops on weekends. I never realized how much my identity was wrapped up in being the struggling artist she confessed during one of our now regular coffee meetings. Part of me was afraid that if I became financially stable, I would lose my creative edge. Instead, the opposite had occurred. With the pressure of financial precarity removed, her art had flourished in unexpected ways. She developed a series of mixed media pieces, exploring themes of family and interdependence that attracted genuine critical attention. 3 months ago, she had secured her first solo show at a respected gallery, selling enough work to cover her expenses for the first time without supplemental support. I feel like I am finally creating from a place of authenticity rather than desperation, she explained, a new confidence, evident in her posture and expression. My own life had similarly evolved. The burden of unspoken resentment lifted, I found new energy for both personal and professional growth. Secure Sync continued to expand, but I now maintained clearer boundaries between work and personal life. Lydia and I had reconciled after our near breakup, the honest conversations about family dynamics, opening a deeper level of intimacy between us. "You stand taller now," she observed one evening, as we prepared dinner together in my condo. "Like you are not carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations." The most significant changes, however, were internal. The constant anxiety that had accompanied family interactions for years had diminished considerably. I no longer tensed when seeing my parents' numbers on caller ID, no longer mentally calculated the financial implications of every family gathering. The freedom from manipulation had created space for genuine connection. Dinner that evening with my parents was unlike our gatherings before the confrontation. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on their activities, my work, community events, and politics. There were occasional disagreements, but they remained respectful rather than devolving into power struggles. My father even asked my advice about a minor investment decision, a previously unimaginable reversal of our old dynamic. As we finished dessert, my mother reached across the table to touch my hand. "We are proud of you," she said simply. "Not just for your success, but for who you are." The words were not elaborate or dramatic, but their sincerity made them powerful. My father nodded in agreement, adding in his characteristically gruff manner, "You stood your ground. Cannot say I enjoyed it at the time, but I respect it." Driving home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The confrontation had been painful for everyone involved, but necessary for growth. By establishing clear boundaries and expectations, I had not only reclaimed my own autonomy, but had inadvertently created space for my parents and sister to develop healthier relationships with money, responsibility, and each other. The most profound lesson was one I was still fully integrating. True generosity comes from freedom rather than obligation. By breaking the cycle of financial control and emotional manipulation, I had created the possibility for genuine giving based on choice rather than coercion. The support I now provided my family came from a place of love rather than guilt or fear, making it more meaningful for both giver and receiver. There would always be challenges in navigating family dynamics. Old patterns sometimes re-emerged in moments of stress, requiring gentle but firm reinforcement of boundaries. The journey toward healthier relationships was ongoing rather than completed. But the foundation had shifted from sand to solid ground, creating stability that benefited everyone involved. As I pulled into my driveway that evening, I thought about the group chat message that had catalyzed this transformation. "Do not call us. Do not visit. You are cut off." Words intended to control through fear of rejection had instead sparked a liberation none of us could have anticipated. By facing the potential loss of family connection, we had paradoxically found a more authentic way to be connected. The greatest freedom I had discovered came not from financial success or independence, but from the courage to define and maintain healthy boundaries, even with those we love most deeply. In standing firm against manipulation, I had created space for genuine relationship to flourish. The auto payments I had canceled represented more than money. They symbolized the end of a dysfunctional system and the beginning of something more authentic for all of us. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your support for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Remember that sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in navigating your own family dynamics with both compassion and healthy boundaries.